Oh dear God, my cosmic armor Superman sense is tingling so hard, and I can't. God help me. Okay, so we're gonna do this again, I guess. I guess that's fine if we want to do the Cosmic Armor Wars again. That's totally fine. Now, I'm gonna try to make this video as fast as possible because I know that this video could potentially reach like 7 hours long. So I'm gonna rapid fire through this as much as possible. Now, Lumos, Theramax, and I have had a little bit of drama and some heated exchanges about, the cosmic tier of DC Comics. He's got his own view, I have mine, and we've been back and forth on this a few times. I thought the drama and, the whole cosmic armor thing was over, but I guess not. I guess nothing changed, which bothers me because in one of your comments, bro, you told me that you learned a lot from watching my content.
You gonna learn today.
Now, for starters, your intro on your video was fabulous. I loved it. What a great intro that you had here. I loved every second of it until you got to this point, right about there. Kaz user 69, clearly a jab at me. Which is better than Great Darkness 420. Drugs are bad. You probably shouldn't do them so much. But once you got right to that point, your video went right off the cliff. And after that, I started reading some of the comments on your video, and I just don't know how to reply to this. Like, as a human being, I don't know how to respond to this without, negativity. Because, some of the things that you're telling these people are, next level, misinformation. You're telling people that the comics did something or said something completely different. And I'm sitting here alone in my bedroom trying to make this video. And I feel like that cat that gets yelled at by the other guy, by the other cat in that funny meme. And I just don't even know what to say at this point. I understand, as you said in the beginning of your video, you want your subscribers to pay you and support you, but you are giving them misinformation because of your lack of research and willingness to actually go read it. You were called out in the comments here by somebody. This user called you out, Lumos. And your response to that was to just chuck it out and say something completely different. This guy in the comments debunked you, whoever that is. It's your job as an educator to come back and say, yeah, I got some information wrong. I'll do better in the future. But you doubled down and you kept up with the misinformation. You didn't go investigate that. You didn't even bother. You just kept up with the misinformation. Nobody should subscribe to you and pay you for that. Nobody should do that. So I understand that you make content specifically to try to make a living on YouTube, but other people don't do that. There are other educators out there who don't want to do that, and they're not gonna pander to misinformation like this just for subscribers, which is clearly what you're doing. Any adult who watches your content knows that's what you're doing if they also have read the comic books and understand what the authors have said. Now, I'm not calling you a liar. I'm calling you a great businessman, is what you're doing here. You're playing to whatever the general consensus is to keep those subscribers in your bubble. But that's not the right way. That's not the ethical way to move forward with educating children and younger teens about art and mythology. You can't do that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to fast forward through your video as much as I can and hit as many points as I can on what you were claiming in your video. And I'm going to try to debunk them in the nicest way I can. And I don't want drama. I want you to learn. I want you to be a good friend. I want you to come around and ask me more questions on this, because it's clear that you and your group just aren't educated on this. You have no clue what this comic book was about. You don't even talk about the philosophy behind it, or the metaphorical context of what any of this means. The profoundness behind this comic book is completely absent in all of your videos. That's the point of the story. That's what you're supposed to be educating the other fans about. That's the important part of this, and you're completely like glossing over like the most important aspects of this comic book. So with that said, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to play some clips, and I'm going to fact check you on every single one of them that I have at least time for today. So here we go.
Cass was blinded and wounded beyond repair before he dispersed his form back down into Superman and Ultraman. This demonstrates a clear limitation to his regeneration or his energy reserves.
Okay, so in this section, what you're claiming to your subscribers is that the cosmic armor actually is some kind of corporeal being that uses actual energy that's not conceptual. This is the embodiment of story, Lumos. Story degrading and becoming more meaningless is not an energy loss. You're seeing this the completely wrong way, and I understand it's your viewpoint on it, but objectively, the cosmic armor is the embodiment of all story for the entire DCU. Mandrak was made to consume that story. He's degrading story. He's erasing it. He is not removing corporeal energy from the cosmic armor. He's making story more meaningless. He's deleting the story. Okay? And the point of Mandrak, again, was that the Overvoid made it to consume the story. So it's not an energy loss. You're describing this in a wildly fan-fiction subjective way, other than what the comics and other than what the authors have described this to be.
The combined idea of Superman and Ultraman's knowledge. Obviously, the hyper story that is the Thought robot contains any and all stories from our multiverse.
So you've just said that the cosmic armor is the hyper story, yet the comic book tells you clearly that the hyper story was trying to kill the cosmic armor. The Overvoid tossing story and anti-story into their own ultimate story is what the hyper story is. The hyper story was trying to kill the cosmic armor, so you can't say that the cosmic armor is trying to kill itself. That makes no sense, Lumos.
But it factors up to the point to this specific story, Final Crisis, Superman Beyond, inside the entire history of DC. This essentially means that you can't retroactively count stories past this point as part of the stories that were utilized within this story.
So in this next section, you're telling your subscribers that the cosmic armor can only be the embodiment of story up to the point in Final Crisis, which is not true, because we've spoken to Steve Orlando in an interview, and he told us that the reason for Mandrak being written the way he was in the 2018 Unexpected series, which is 10 years after Final Crisis, was because of the cosmic armor. The cosmic armor etches to be continued on the gravestone, and because of that, Mandrak was rewritten into the Unexpected series as a form of mercy, which is confirmed by the author. So when you tell people that it's just up to this point, no. We have no idea what else the cosmic armor is responsible for. 10 years later, he's still etching a story for the other comic books that we've read, literally a decade later. So you can't possibly say that it's only up to Final Crisis. That just simply isn't true.
This scales up to the Limbo, which is where all stories go to die.
You've also claimed that Limbo is the place where stories go to die. They go there for the complete opposite reason. They go there to live and continue to exist in a place of total retcon. Limbo is the retcon continuity for most of the fictions that you can think of. It's a shared continuity flow for things that are no longer part of the comic book series. They go there to live and continue to be. They don't go there to die. It's the complete opposite of what you said.
It's also important to note that stories got much stronger after this event, and since entire layers of cosmology have been added to our cosmology, to DC cosmology since then, obviously things have gotten a lot larger and more dangerous.
So here you're saying that the cosmology got even larger and more dangerous, but the events of Dark Crisis told you that all of that cosmology was still there and nothing changed. The only thing that changed was the barrier between the Local 52 and the greater Omniverse. The greater Omniverse is not past the source wall. We learned that the entire greater Omniverse is actually within bleed space, and it's just the larger area of the Orrery of Worlds. That was confirmed in Dark Crisis, so the cosmology never changed. All of the cosmologies were still there, being hidden somewhere else in bleed space. We have confirmation of that. So to say otherwise is truly, headache worthy at this point, man.
It's also important to note that the stories that are contained by Cass are just the stories of our singular multiverse, not the stories of other multiverses out in the Overvoid.
So you're saying that the cosmic armor only contains the stories of our multiverse, and then you show a picture of Lucifer flying in the Garbodaka void, which is Pralea, which is the interior void, which is nowhere near the Overvoid. Do you know anything about religion? Do you understand, Lumos, after the 7 million videos that I've made detailing what the absolute void is and what the Garbodaka is? That's the Sea of Brahma that Lucifer was flying in. So why are you talking about the Overvoid and flashing a picture of this void from the Lucifer series when you know full well that that void is not the Overvoid? It's not the Monitor Mind. It's defined completely different. It's defined that way by Lucifer repeatedly in the comic books. We have 3 Lucifer series that confirm that void is the Sea of Brahma Garbodaka, and it's nowhere even close to the Overvoid. So why are you continuing to say this? Bro, you gotta start getting this right and letting your subscribers know what this is all about and what these locations are defined as right in the comic book. And worse, you keep saying that there's other multiverses and creations in the Overvoid, but the author and the comic tell you that it's non-dual. Once you get into that place, everything is meaningless. There is nothing else beyond the source wall but the unknowable and the Overvoid. There are no other multiverses. The Ori of Worlds is the Omniverse. That's what you're not understanding. You think there are other multiverses past the source wall. That isn't the case. They're all inside of the Ori of Worlds. There's nothing else in the Overvoid. It's just the Overvoid. Going into the Overvoid means you cease to be. Remember, Lucifer was begging to go to non-existence. When he was finally sent to non-existence, the presence also was deleted too. Their concepts get deleted the moment that they get sent into total non-being. So you're telling me that the presence and Lucifer get deleted as soon as they enter the Overvoid, but also there's other creations out there that are you saying that the other creations are stronger than the presence? As soon as you go into the Overvoid, your concept gets deleted. The very idea of you gets lost. The other creations that you're saying exist in the Overvoid should not be there if these giga gods like Lucifer and the presence automatically get deleted as soon as they touch it.
Clearly, Cass doesn't represent the entire Overvoid as many believe, as he couldn't even tell what happened to Mandrak after he fell off of Nil into the Overvoid.
Okay, so you're claiming that the Cosmic Armor can't see what Mandrak was doing in the Unexpected series when he fell through the multiverse, but I've just told you that the author confirmed that the Cosmic Armor himself wrote Mandrak to be that way in the Unexpected series. I understand that you don't want to listen to authors when they say things that you don't like. But if you're going to be an educator and you're going to try to answer questions for people that come in and are curious about the mythology of the things that we love, my friend, you have to respect the content creator explaining the things that aren't explained in their comic books and their fictional stories. This is what the author said. You're saying the complete opposite of what Steve Orlando told us. Why are you doing that?
Long was Mandrak lost in the Overvoid before he fell into the Dark Multiverse? And before you ask, yes, this is the same Mandrak from the one in Final Crisis, as he...
And before you ask, he's the same Mandrak from Final Crisis. The author literally tells you no, he's not. It's his own new version of it. What are you not seeing here? What are you not seeing? Lumos. You can't just go the opposite route and completely deny that. You can't do that. Now, I understand you can do that, and that's what you're doing. If you want to deny it, that's totally fine, but you have to at least tell your subscribers that this information exists from the author. Can you please do that in your future videos? I would appreciate it if you do that.
However, there is no indication at all that Cass could keep up with the top tiers of the entire DC Greater Omniverse, including threats from the Overvoid such as the Hands of the Source, like Perpetua, the Judges of the Source, the Archangels, or the Chronicler. We haven't...
So in this next section, you're saying that Lucifer and the Archangels, and the Presence and the Hands and the Darkest Night, and the Judges of the Source, and the Source are all more powerful than the cosmic armor, which simply isn't the case. Let me show you why. The Pax Dei army was set up by the Presence to take out the army of Lucifer. Gabriel by himself was enough to defeat Lucifer in his prime. We saw that in the comic book. The Pax Dei, plus a lot of other characters, fire on Rox Ogama, who is a fallen monitor who had his monitor status stripped, who is not even remotely close to the original Mandrake power or the cosmic armor. And this Pax Dei army fires on him, doesn't even scratch him. In fact, Rox Ogama doesn't even notice that he was fired on by the army of God. Now, one thing that a lot of scalers don't really pay attention to is, why is the Pax Dei angry at Rox Ogama? Why are they pissed off and want revenge on Rox Ogama? There's no reason for it. He didn't apparently do anything to a lot of other scalers, right? No, he's the guy who ate Universe 51. The god of Universe 51 is the Presence. If you read Final Crisis Revelations, they tell you, Cain and the Spectre repeatedly tell you, that the old god is dead. The Presence died. The ending of the Presence brings the fifth world. That was the prophecy. The Spectre and the Radiant confirm that they cannot perish unless the Presence is dead first. Then after all of that, Rox Ogama throws the corpses of the Spectre and the Radiant down on the floor and says, hey, here's the servants of God. I just ate them. That can't happen unless the Presence is dead. That's not even opinion. That's what the comic book says. So when you tell us that Lucifer and the Presence are more powerful than the cosmic armor, no, that's not the case. The context of the cosmic armor includes all of DC, all of Marvel, all of these other sections of the Orrery of Worlds that, again, the authors have told us is the context of the Final Crisis lore. I understand, again, that you don't want to accept that. That's totally fine, but you have to at least tell people in your videos. You have to let your subscribers know that this information is out there, and it's up to them to discern which path they want to take. Do they want to respect the author, or do they not want to respect the author? Do they want to respect the guidebook that the author wrote, or do they not want to respect the author's guidebook? That's their choice. You need to give them that choice. You're not giving them that choice. You keep saying that the source is beyond the cosmic armor. The source is the entity, the God entity, the Ein Sof Or of DC Comics. Right next to DC Comics in the Orrery of Worlds is Marvel. Earth 41 is the Spawn universe. That's the Spawn cosmology with the Man of Miracles. So you're not understanding the way the context is laid out. The cosmic armor is the embodiment of the entire Orrery of Worlds and the sphere of gods above it, and every other fictional sphere of God. They all have their own. Marvel doesn't have Endless in it. They have their own. They have Oblivion and the House of Ideas and the Far Plane and every all these other places like that. And Spawn has their own. They don't have, a Dreaming or anything like that. That is a completely different cosmology with their own god, equivalent of the Presence and the Source. The Source is from DC Comics. It's not the One Above All. The One Above All is in the cosmology section of Earth 8. That's the context. The context of this story is everything outside of fictional space. The Source is in Plane Time. The One Above All is in Plane Time. The Man of Miracles is in Plane Time. Above Plane Time is Earth 33 that contains every fictional space that there is. Above fictional space is Hyper Time, every possible variant of every other thing below it. The monitors of Nil oversee that Hyper Time. Again, the context that you're not telling your subscribers is that Grant had a bad drug trip, thought he saw some cosmic abstracts. They took him elsewhere, and Grant was shown all the truths of existence. Grant then wrote those characters as the monitors of Nil, who oversee everything. That's the context of what they are. They are not contextually from DC Comics. I've told you this repeatedly. You have to tell your subscribers all of this other information. And I understand and respect your viewpoint, dude, but you're not showing your subscribers 90% of all the other information out there. You gotta show them that other stuff and let your subscribers make the decision on their own. You can't not show all this stuff.
omniversal structures. Take, for example, the events that occurred during the Smile event. And clearly during the events of Incarnate, they are referencing the fact the Great Darkness could destroy the entire greater omniverse.
I'm really glad that you brought up the Smile event because, again, another author statement that debunks you. DeMatteis live on Twitter telling you that the divine presence is basically the source. It's defined as the originator of the God wave, of all gods and spiritual paths, which is the source. So again, the source is not meant to be meta outside of literal fictional space. That's not the context of what this story was about. The Great Darkness destroying the greater omniverse. At the end of Dark Crisis, again, we found out that the greater omniverse is just another section of the Orrery of Worlds outside of the local 52. We had thought it was beyond the source wall into the overvoid, but at the end of the series, Lumos, we found out that the entire greater omniverse in context and definition was actually just more bleed space. It's nowhere near the overvoid, so your greater omniverse that you're talking about is just past the local 52. It's still within the Orrery of Worlds.
Just has higher levels of existence than Cass demonstrated throughout the totality of his story. Even Golden Wonder Woman, somebody who could process the overvoid beyond our multiverse, still required the judge that...
You get called out in the comments, and then you warp. You completely warp what that comic book said. The comic book told you that the Source Forge gave Alden and Neon its power, specifically to kill and try to defend against Mandrak. The Source Forge was pissing itself over the thought of Mandrak returning, so it gifted its power to Alden and Neon. Let me debunk you on this. Let me debunk everybody else on this. What is inside of that forge at full power? The comic book tells us that Element X is the stuff of the forge. One piece, Lumos, one small piece of Element X of the forge was enough to destroy Barbados, amped by the entire dark multiverse. One piece, Lumos, one piece of that forge, one piece of Element X in that forge obliterated Barbados, amped on the entire dark multiverse. That forge has infinite pieces of Element X in it at full power. You briefly mentioned that Golden Wonder Woman might be more powerful than the Cosmic Armor. Well, again, I've told you this. I've made videos on this repeatedly. You have seen them. So I need you to go start telling your subscribers what the comic books showed. That Source Forge, when Diana walked into it, was dim and dying. It was fractional. It was almost completely burnt out. It was at like 1% of its normal power. It then fractionalized the 1% and gave that power to Diana. So a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of the power of the forge was given to Diana. She used that power to obliterate the most powerful version of the Darkest Night. That exact same forge, the same one at full power, gave all of its power to Neon and Alden. Infinitely more power than the Dark Knight, than what killed the Darkest Night at his most powerful. A fraction of the Source Forge obliterated the Darkest Night. The full power of the Forge was no-sold by a depowered Mandrak. Mandrak then says to Neon and Alden, "The cosmic armor is so far past you. Lips stronger than yours. You'll never get past me." That was stated by the cosmic armor, Lumos. So you like to listen to the comic books unless the comic books debunk you and they say something that you don't like. I don't know if that's the case or not, but you have had ample opportunity to come talk to me about all this stuff before making your video to make sure it was right. And it's not right. So I have to blast you for it. I have no other choice. Here in that comic, you're telling people that Mandrak was obliterated by Alden and Neon, but it's actually the reverse, where the comic book tells you that the full power of Neon and Alden were not enough to combatively hurt Mandrak. The only thing that they can do was change Mandrak's nature in a depowered state. That's all they can do. They changed what food he liked, and they made him go away. He no longer wanted to play the game. Everything is a game to him. He didn't attack them afterwards. He didn't destroy anything. He just wanted to eat. That's all he wanted to do. They changed his food source. They couldn't beat him combatively. With the full power of the Source Forge, they could not do it. Now again, you claim that the hands are more powerful than the cosmic armor. The Darkest Night was en route to becoming more powerful than those same Source judges and the hands. They said that in the comic book. Diana said nothing to counter it. Nothing whatsoever. So that is the case. If a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of the Source Forge obliterated the Darkest Night in his most powerful state, but the hands and the Source judges weren't that far ahead, then what would the full power of the Forge do with infinite versions of the Element X? Do you see the scaling issue that you've squandered over at this point? The cosmic armor was more powerful than the full power of the Source Forge. Again, this is the Forge that the Source endowed Perpetua with. Okay? This is the Source Forge. This is the Forge of Worlds. Alpheus made 2 infinite multiverses with this Forge. Okay? An infinite multiverse times 2. The light and the dark multiverse all came from the Forge. And Alpheus didn't use the full power of the Forge. He can only do it one piece at a time. Whereas the full power was given to Alden and Neon of that same thing. And Mandrake in a depowered state no-souled it. Then said the cosmic armor is stronger than both of you. Do you see the problem in the scaling issue here? Just show your subscribers what the comic books say. You were talking about these things in your video, but you didn't show the scans. You didn't show the references. You didn't show anything in context around it. You are censoring all of these statements. You're censoring the comic books just for views. That's my interpretation of what you're doing. I hope I'm wrong. I really, really hope I'm wrong. At this point, the video is like over half an hour long. I'm not going to go into the rest of it. I'm not even going to go into the rest of it. Okay? You have yet to explain to me how the DC Comics Hands, Source, Perpetua, Lucifer, and the Presence, who are stuck in Plane Time. They're all fictional things in Plane Time. How do they transcend Plane Time and get out of Plane Time to go to Cube Time, which the author says no fictional thing in Plane Time can do? Then they bypass that and go to Hyper Time. Then they bypass that and bypass the monitors of Nil. Then they bypass that and go into the Overvoid. Places, again, that Lucifer and the Presence said that they can't go to and automatically get deleted in once they go to. Once they get sent to non-being, they get erased. So, Lumos, I'm trying desperately here. I'm trying. I really am. And I don't want drama between us. This is going to be the last video I make about you. I'm never going to make a video about you again. This is the last one. I have no reason to continue making videos about this if you're going to say these things. I just want you to show your subscribers what the comic books and the authors said. That's all. You can have your own interpretation and also let your subscribers know what all of the data is. That's the only thing I care about.